You're 19. You didn't stumble into this. You applied 3 times. The first 2, you failed the fitness test with a heavy backpack, 20 kilograms over 5 kilometers of rough terrain. Third time, you passed barely. A letter arrives from the Forest Service. Report to the base in Montana on Monday at 0500 hours. No negotiation. No delay. The base is a complex of wooden hangars on the eastern edge of the forest. 40 recruits. 2 weeks in, 8 are gone. Not fired, they quit. You understand why. The days begin in the dark and end in the dark. A 10-kilometer run before breakfast. Push-ups until your arms forget what straight feels like. Then classroom hours. Weather. Topography. Fire behavior doctrine. Your instructor, a veteran named Carter, has a habit of standing directly behind you when you least expect it. He never shouts. That's the part that unsettles you. He just waits, silent, until your hands stop trembling from exhaustion. One morning, a recruit named Miller starts talking back during trench digging. Nothing dramatic. Just 3 words. That's not fair. Carter doesn't blink. He says, "Drop." Miller drops. The rest of you drop with him. Miller is gone by Friday. You say nothing for the next 6 weeks. You learn what the silence costs you. You learn what it saves. By graduation, there are 23 of you left. You're handed a yellow fire-resistant shirt. It's heavier than you expected. Level 2. The Wildland Firefighter. U-21. 2 years on a hotshot crew. This is mandatory before the Smokejumper program will even look at you. Your beat is the dry forests of California. 16-hour shifts. You work with a veteran named Dawson, who has 15 years on the job and a habit of eating cold beans from a can at 3 a.m. He never rushes. You ask him once why he moves so slow when a new fire is called in. Because the ones who sprint toward every fire, he says, burn out or break their legs. Pace yourself or the job eats you. You respond to a spot fire in a remote canyon. You're digging a fire line. The wind shifts, and the wall of flame turns toward you. Dawson calmly orders a retreat. You fall back to a safety zone and watch the forest you tried to save burn. You write the report exactly as it happened. You document the wind shift. You document his words. The report goes nowhere. You write another one 2 months later, same canyon. You learn that nature and justice are 2 separate roads that sometimes cross and sometimes don't. At the end of year 2, you submit your Smokejumper application. Dawson signs your recommendation letter without being asked. You'll be good at it, he tells you. You don't panic. That matters more than anything else. Level 3. The candidate. You're 23. Selection lasts 5 weeks. They call it assessment week. You call it something else by day 3. It begins with an obstacle course at 0430 before sunrise. Then parachute packing against the clock. Hundreds of times. Then a written psychological evaluation. Then a panel interview with 4 senior instructors who ask you questions designed to have no right answer. You land in the forest. Your partner is hanging from a tree. Fire is 100 meters away. You have 2 seconds. They watch your eyes while you answer. In week 4, they run you through a simulated high-altitude drop in a decommissioned airplane in Idaho. Your team has to deploy into difficult terrain while a role player acts as a panic pilot. Everything that can go wrong does. The role player screams. The wind shifts. Radio communication drops. Afterward, a senior instructor named Holloway debriefs each candidate individually. He tells you you hesitated at the door. Why? You tell him the truth. You weren't sure if the drop zone was clear because of the smoke. He writes something down. Doesn't tell you what. Of 62 candidates, 11 are selected. You're one of them. You don't celebrate. Something about the whole week tells you this was the easy part. Level 4. The probationary smokejumper. You're 24. 18 months of probation. You're on the team, but you're not of the team. Not yet. Smokejumpers operate differently than what most people imagine. There are no movie moments. There is repetition. You drill landing in a timbered area 400 times until your body does it without your brain's permission. You train on towers, ropes, and decommission fuselages. You drill emergency procedures with Sergeant Reyes, a former Army rescue specialist, who has the patience of a man who has nothing left to prove. Your first real call-out is a remote fire in Wyoming. You take your position by the aircraft door. You deploy and dig a line around a small flare for 4 hours. You wait for extraction for 3 days. You never see open flame. Some of the newer guys are visibly disappointed. You're not. Holloway once told you during selection, "A jump where nothing happens is a perfect jump." You're starting to understand what he meant. By month 14, you stop being watched quite so closely. By month 18, your probation ends. Nobody makes a speech. Reyes just nods at you across the hangar. That's enough. Level 5. The full operator. You 26. You are now a full smoke jumper. You've made 31 fire jumps. The work is not what television made it. Between jumps, there are thousands of hours of training. Sewing parachutes, maintaining chainsaws, medical training, tourniquets, chest seals, needle decompressions. You become fluent in all of it. A call-out comes. A fast-moving fire threatens a small settlement. The call comes at 11:14 a.m. You are in the plane before the briefing is finished. You jump in 90 minutes. The settlement is already evacuated. You build a defense line. The wind shifts and you have to deploy your fire shelters. You lie in the dust for 40 minutes. The heat passes. You crawl out. Afterward, in the debrief, nobody talks about how they felt. That's not the culture. You talk about angles of attack, communication gaps, escape routes, what worked, what didn't. On the flight back, your partner Torres says quietly, "Good day." That's the whole debrief. You understand that the weight of this job doesn't live in the jumps. It lives in the nights between them, when your mind replays the roar of the fire and counts the seconds differently. Level 6. The spotter. You're 29. You're tapped for spotter school. Not everyone is asked. You don't ask why you were. The school is 8 weeks. A spotter is the one who flies in the plane, assesses the wind and the fire, and decides if it's safe to jump. The instruction is precise, methodical, and completely humbling. You spend the first 2 weeks learning to do nothing, how to evaluate a zone from altitude without making rash decisions. A spotter's discipline is knowing how to say no. Your instructor is a woman named Kwan, who has 12 years on the team and a surgical calm that makes you feel perpetually behind. She doesn't waste words. In the air, she communicates in half sentences, and you learn to complete them. The standard for a drop is exact. Wind direction, group safety, clear identification of the landing zone. You memorize this not as policy, but as weight. Every simulation ends with a decision. Sometimes you drop people. Sometimes you abort the mission. The debrief afterward is always the same. Explain your reasoning step by step to a room of people who are paid to find holes in it. Your first real deployment as a spotter is rugged terrain in Oregon. You circle a canyon for 7 hours. The fire dies down on its own due to rain. You drop no personnel. The plane returns to base. Kwan says, "Good day." You're starting to recognize what a good day really means. Level 7. The team leader. You're 33. You are now responsible for 6 jumpers. That changes something fundamental. Before, you only had to trust your own training. Now you have to trust theirs and you have to shape it. You run the morning drills. You review every jumper's qualification scores. You study their strengths and, more carefully, their gaps. There's a newer jumper named Paxton. Technically sharp. Excellent sawyer. But in scenario training, he makes decisions fast. Too fast. He moves before he has full information. You pull him aside after a drill. Speed is useful, you tell him. Accuracy is better. The two aren't the same thing. He listens. You watch him slow down incrementally over the next 4 months. Your first major fire as a team leader is rescuing a group of hikers. 3 injured, a wall of fire, 17 wind vectors. Command gives you 20 minutes to draft a plan. You use 18 of them. The operation takes 4 hours of exhausting timber cutting. All hikers walk out alive. In the after-action report, you credit your team. Every name, every position, every decision made correctly under pressure. Command asks why you didn't take personal credit for the ideal route. You tell them, because I made 2 mistakes in there and they covered for both. That's what I want on the report. Level 8. The Airspace Coordinator. You're 37. They send you to advanced airspace coordination courses. 14 days. You expected tactics. What you find is closer to philosophy. The lead instructor is a former pilot named Brandt. He opens the first session with a question. What do people on the ground need more than anything when everything is burning? The room answers, exact coordinates, water, safety, evacuation. Brandt shakes his head. They need to know they aren't alone, he says. Everything else is secondary. You carry that sentence for the rest of your career. Back in the field, your role shifts. You sit in a coordination aircraft high above the fire. You are the voice on the radio managing the chaos when the situation on the ground stops making sense. A call comes in on a Tuesday in August. A ground crew is trapped by fire in a canyon. The wind shifted. The ground crew leader tells you over the radio there's no way out. You stay on the line for 3 hours and 40 minutes. You don't promise them things will be fine. You don't threaten. You don't rush. You just ask them questions, coordinate water drops right in front of their position, and listen, really listen, to the pauses between their answers. At 23:52, they report they've broken through to the river. You just turn off the radio, cover your face with your hands, and stay silent. Some wins don't make the news. Those are usually the ones that cost the most. Level 9. Base Commander. You're 43. You command the unit now. 41 smokejumpers, pilots, technicians, a budget, and the weight of every decision made in your name. The work is mostly invisible. You don't jump into smoke anymore. You approve budgets. You review reports. You sit in briefings with officials who want smokejumpers available for every incident and accountable for anything that goes wrong. A high-profile fire goes badly. Not catastrophically, but badly. One of your people gets severe burns due to a sudden wind shift. Actions were justified, protocol was followed, but local media is already blowing up a 15-second clip filmed by a tourist. Level 10. The end of the line. You're 51. You sit in a folding chair in a hangar in Montana. It's a retirement ceremony, yours. There are speeches. There are people in the room who worked alongside you for more than 2 decades. Someone reads from a list of operations. Saved forests, contained fires, protected homes. The number is specific and large, and somehow still feels incomplete because it doesn't include the calls that didn't make the list. Conversations over the radio, moments that ended without incident because someone did their job without needing to be seen doing it. Dawson is in the back of the room. He retired 8 years before you. He drove 5 hours to be here. He doesn't say much. He shakes your hand and nods once, and that means more than every speech combined. You drive home alone that night. You think about Miller, who quit in week 2. You think about the young jumper Estrada, who came into your office and asked if she did the right thing during that fire. You told her she followed her training, and her training was correct. That's as close to certainty as this job gets. You think about Dawson eating cold beans at 3 a.m. and teaching you to pace yourself. You didn't always manage that, but you tried. The house is quiet. You sit in the dark for a while. You spent 32 years learning when to move fast and when to wait, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to act and when to trust that doing nothing was still doing something. Nobody told you when you started that the job would end this quietly, but quiet, you understand now, was always the goal. You never needed the noise to know the work was real.